Today on Film Inside, let's take a look at shutter speed. So welcome insiders, I'm Eric. A few months ago, I got the Canon T3i. This is my very first DSLR, and I've been learning a lot because of it. I've learned about ISO, aperture, shutter speed, which is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. A bit more like frame rates and whatnot, and just all the manual controls that I did not have on my Canon Vixia HF-M40. In general, there really is a lot to learn, but today we're going to be focusing on only one thing, and that's shutter speed. The shutter speed determines how long your shutter is open, which will affect how much light is going onto your sensor. A slower shutter speed of like a 30th of a second is going to allow more light into your sensor, which will make your video or pictures brighter. And obviously on the contrary, if you have a really fast shutter speed of like 0.002 of a second, then you're going to have less light on your image. The thing is, shutter speed doesn't just affect the amount of light on your sensor. If it just did, I would mostly have it at a 30th of a second because I'm always trying to find more light for my videos. But the reality is, shutter speed is going to affect motion blur. Quickly mentioning photography though, photographers tend to go in really high shutter speeds to capture fast moving action, whether it's a little kid jumping around on a trampoline, or maybe a really fast runner running down a track, or someone playing sports like they're kicking a soccer ball. But when it comes to video, it's a little bit different. I could go record an event like a soccer game, and I could put my camera in a really high shutter speed, but that's probably not going to look good. While shooting video, if you want a proper motion blur that your eye sees, then you want to go double of your frame rate. So that means if I'm shooting on my Canon T3i, which I'm doing right now at 30 frames per second, my shutter speed should be at 1/60th of a second. To show you a demonstration on this, let's take a look at my little fountain over there. So right now this video is at 1/30th of a second, and there's a little bit more motion blur than there should be. Now 1/30th of a second is the slowest shutter speed my camera can go at, but if I was at even slower shutter speed of like 1/15th of a second, you're gonna notice a huge difference. But with that said, let's now jump over to 1/60th of a second and see if you can tell the difference. To be honest, I really don't see that much of a huge difference between 1/30th and 1/60th of a second, but let's go to something a bit more extravagant. Here is 3/20th of a second, and my image is starting to get a bit darker, so I'm gonna have to up the ISO. Nonetheless though, looking at the water, you're gonna be able to see more of the water droplets because there's less motion blur. Now going even more extreme, let's go to 0.002 of a second. Now I had to raise the ISO a crazy amount because there is a very little light, but now it's basically no motion blur. You can see basically every droplet. I know the image is a bit dark, but still there's no motion blur, and to be honest, I don't really like the image overall. It just looks very choppy to me. Now I can go even high in the shutter speed up to 4,000, but the image is just getting way too dark, so I'm not gonna bother. So now let's do one last test, and that's just me moving my hand back and forth. So here is 1/60th of a second, which is its proper shutter speed. Everything should look pretty natural, but now let's jump over to a really high shutter speed of 3,200ths of a second. And as you see right now, everything is getting a bit more choppy. Now with all those tests aside, I'm kind of bashing high shutter speed, and rightfully so. High shutter speed isn't something you should use often, and personally, I don't like using high shutter speed because that means I have to raise my ISO, which will add more noise to my video. But even with all that said, high shutter speed still has its place. High shutter speeds can actually get some pretty interesting shots, and I'm not sure why you want to do this, but if you want to record a fan blade spinning around, you can put the shutter speed really high, and you'll be able to see the fan blade spin all the way around with no motion blur, or at least little motion blur. But being a bit more realistic here, maybe you're shooting a short film, an action-packed short film, and you want a bit less motion blur so you can raise the shutter speed and have a bit more of a jumpy video, which could add some quality to your video. But now we go into the opposite end of the spectrum. What about slow shutter speed? Now I'm shooting at 1/60th of a second, and my camera can only go down to 1/30th of a second, but if my camera could go a bit lower to like 1/15th of a second, you're gonna be seeing a lot of motion blur, and that could be an interesting shot if you're trying to capture kind of like a dream sequence if you're shooting a short film. Besides that though, I'm not sure why you would want to shoot at a slow shutter speed. So there you guys go, that is the basics of shutter speed. And I hope you realize why I'm teaching this to you guys. If you guys shoot on a DSLR, maybe you're shooting outside and it's really bright outside, so you want to turn down something and you're going to turn down your shutter speed to make the video less bright, I would think twice before doing that, because then you're going to be messing with the motion blur, which may or may not be a bad thing. Anyway guys, I hope you liked today's video. Hope you find this information useful, and if you want to see any more information about like shooting with a DSLR, maybe talk about aperture, depth of field, or anything like that, let me know down below. Anyway guys, my name's Eric, this is Tech Inside, and I'm signing out.